Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. I'm not gay. So this video is part 2. And it has to do with my second point, which is something that goes as follows. In order for a nation or an individual to have their humanity intact, they must have a human or moral response to poverty. A human response is a moral response. If it's not moral, it's not really human. And I mean universally moral. And moral absolutes exist. They have to have an honest and humane response. That's why it's called a humane response. For example, when it comes to homelessness, America could easily have the 25 million richest people pay $40 each a year for 1 billion more in oversight. You could also have citizen committees. So again, when it comes to money, right, the wealthiest 25 million individuals in America paid a mere $40 a year. You could have $1 billion in oversight for the homeless program. You could have them all be FBI agents. Thousands of FBI agents on the job. Now obviously that's an overkill, right? But it doesn't cost that much. The issue is far more important than rich people not wanting to pay less than $4 a month to solve the issue. So quite often when you hear people talk about it, they say things like, hey, they're just going to waste the money anyway. They don't seem to be able to make up their mind whether or not the problem is they're going to waste the money, whether or not the problem is they hate homeless people and think they all deserve to be homeless or something, or whether or not the problem is that socialism is on the rise, which is a very stupid argument. For example, if they decided to lower the tax rate of the wealthiest people by 1% and then they raise it 1%, would they say socialism's on the rise? If after the big beautiful bill runs its course, if they don't renew it, would they say socialism's on the rise? So obviously there has to be a line somewhere. If they argue that socialism's on the rise without drawing the line accurately, then obviously they're up to no good. And they're obstructing justice. And when it comes to 40,000 or so homeless people dying in the streets every year, that's one number. The number could be high as 40,000 plus. That obstruction of justice is a pretty big problem. And when we think about the domino effect, right, the more issues we have to solve that are easily solvable, that people refuse to solve for petty reasons, the more chaos there is in the political arena. Pretty straightforward. So it's very clear that they should pass a bill where the 25 million richest people in America pay something like $3.34 a month to raise $1 billion or so for oversight for a homeless plan. And then just like with Iran, they should just cut the check. I don't agree with the Iranian war. That's not what this video is about. But what it is about is the fact that they could easily end homelessness for $40 billion, okay? And then, just a few billion a year to stay ahead from there, pay-as-you-can programs, what have you. So when we consider about how America could be, and we consider what the problem is, how they're not focusing on the fundamentals, like things like this, and we see people going off on tangents as a result, we see that the problem is conservatism. Conservatism, which includes white supremacy in the American context, is the single biggest problem that faces America. It is the main thing that terrorizes the citizens of America, and it is the main reason that we have over 2 million preventable deaths every year in America, which is somewhere around 6,000 preventable deaths or so every single day. That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. Yet we see that many Democrats seem to think that conservatism is the answer, and they put up straw men. They spearhead the charge on the far left, have various fringe groups, various unsavory characters. So they have various fringe groups and various unsavory characters spearheading the charge on the far left to confuse the issue. Because the answer is to have a more progressive tax rate with lots of oversight. Because the only logical counter-argument for raising taxes on the wealthy and having more social programs is that they waste the money. The logic would tell you, if you have a lot of institutions put their reputation on the line, the FBI, what have you, if you have citizen committees, if you have an unprecedented amount of oversight, that will solve the problem. And the oversight can also set a precedent that and set the model for the other departments of the government to make a much more efficient government. $1 billion in oversight goes a long way.